Welcome to AviaCast, a podcast that brings you conversations, stories, and insights from across the world of aviation. From everyday experiences to big industry shifts, we explore what keeps the skies moving and the people behind it all. Whether you're an aviation enthusiast or just curious about what happens above the clouds, fasten your seatbelts because you're cleared for takeoff. Hello, everyone. My name is Ayush Mishra. Welcome to AviaCast. Today, I'll be joined by Rohit Tomar. Rohit is an external aviation consultant with more than 20 years of aviation experience ranging from operations to finance across multiple airlines. Rohit has further worked with various airline senior management towards specifically increasing profitability and addressing structural issues within the airline industry. Rohit has also worked closely with aviation policymakers as part of a think tank to enable aviation policies to align with the long term sustainable objectives of the industry at large. In finality, Rohit is not only extremely overqualified to not only talk about the world of aviation, but has seen the industry evolve from the inside out through crisis, turnarounds, mergers, and disruptions. Whether it's decoding why airlines fail, how they can thrive, what policies could shape the skies of tomorrow. Rohit brings us a rare 360-degree perspective. His insights aren't just theoretical. They come from decades of hands-on involvement with the people, numbers, and systems that keep aviations flying. Welcome to the podcast, Rohit. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Ayush, for having me here. It's a good timing uh, for these discussions. A lot of things happening in aviation, so thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I feel like the entire stratosphere of the internet and the world of aviation, in some respect, is on fire right now. We just had a banging podcast where Raj Shivani just come out a few days ago with Vijay Mallya himself, the owner, the infamous Vijay Mallya.
No,
So
that's true. Yeah, yeah. A lot of stories around it, but yes.
So when you first heard the podcast, obviously you saw all the political, you saw all the personal, you saw all the movings about what happened with Kingfisher Airlines, because you yourself also saw it firsthand. We know the rise and fall of
Yeah.
Kingfisher, as we say. But what else struck you about it? Like, what insights can you give us that actually are not available in the public's eye right now?
You see, I think we all heard the podcast, and to a to a certain extent, yes, those discussions were largely focused on the loans that were there and what happened after those loans and stuff like that. But that's just the sort of the climax of the movie. Uh, the key point is to understand why that ending happened. And we we don't really we very seldom talk about it, but in reality, look at it. You had Kingfisher Airlines which went down, you had Jet Airways which went down, you had Air Deccan which was losing money, you had Paramount Airline which shut down. You have SpiceJet, which is continuously struggling with its financials for it's a cat with nine lives
Yeah.
that we call in aviation industry. But and all out of all of this, you've just got one sort of single like a hero in the movie, which is Indigo.
Yes.
The kind of Salman Khan of the aviation industry. And then now you have Air India, Tata's and Air India. So I think the broader perspective of what we need to understand is that what really structurally went wrong in the company. And I think there were a lot of factors which while a lot of people have done studies and have seen people writing their master thesis on the lessons from Kingfisher Airlines and stuff like that. But listen, I mean, uh, to a large extent, they dug their own grave
Mhm.
by I mean, I'm sure he was a good businessman in the area of UB Group and the liquor business that he was doing. But I think he just did not understand the airline industry and what is required to run an airline in especially in Asia region, because Asia region airline is very difficult from running a Virgin Atlantic in UK, or a Delta Airlines in US. Asia presents a very unique uh, set of problems which needs to be addressed structurally when you're running the airline. So I think he just took it for granted, and that is what I mean. I think the story was already half dead by the time of interval. The
Mm.
finale was just was sort of a uh, a nail in the coffin, but the movie was already finished by interval. I mean, by 2008, you already had full indication that this airline is not going anywhere.
No, you touch on so many keystone points here actually, because I feel like Vijay Mallya, he was absolutely a terrific businessman. I mean, let's not take it for granted. He was running an empire. He was worth so much money, a lot of money that I wish to see in my own life. But what Vijay Mallya I think was really selling with Kingfisher Airlines was an experience. It was a certain lifestyle. And another point which I would like to connect with what you said is that when you're selling something like an experience in the Indian aviation market, for example, which is so budget conscious, I think it's the largest middle class market in the world. So people who go there, they aren't really flexible when it comes to the budget. You know, it's a very strict format that they actually follow. So when something like Kingfisher comes along and it is like, okay, you know, we're gonna sell you this 5-star life, and then it is unable to then keep up with the cost, I think, which is one of the main problems which happened. You know, I think that's where a lot of the big problems happen, because Vijay Mallya was amazing in marketing, but I think just like a lot of marketers, he failed to account for the financials going down the line.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. See, it's not that India does not have a market for a leisure airline. Okay, even back then, you did have some market for a leisure airline. Let's be honest about it. You had people still, Air India still had business class. You had enough people who could probably afford a business class, or there were enough companies. Like if you look at the business class segment,
Mm-hmm.
these are the people who are generally people who are not probably paying by themselves, but are being paid by their companies to travel X, Y, and Z. So it's not really that we did not have a market for it. The problem was that your whatever you are planning as a product,
Mm-hmm.
your your uh, your decision making in terms of bringing that product to life has to be aligned with it. You can't say that I want to have a product which is going to be a premium airline, and then go and buy aircraft at catalog or really significant pricing, and try to compete with another guy who has the same kind of an aircraft but at half of your cost in terms of
Mm-hmm.
operation. So you've seen some of these airlines doing really well. There is an airline in Thailand which operates what we call as a boutique airline concept, which is Bangkok Airways, and they have been doing fantastically well. It's not that they've not been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that again brings to the question that you had the right product. You could probably, yes, get the right kind of people to do it, but then you're stuck in between two areas. In the airline industry, the key to profitability is volume, because the cost in aviation industry, no matter what you do, there will be a cost creep, and that cost creep happens because is 60-70% of your cost is largely dependent on foreign players, which is beyond your control. And those costs will keep increasing no matter what happens. So you will constantly see a 3%, 3.5% increase in costing on a year-to-year basis. So you need to have the scale of economies, or you need to be able to increase your fleet in order to offset, or increase your revenue in order to offset that increase in cost. Yeah, simple. Uh, but in this case, the starting line that Indigo took for the kind of product that they were launching was already a very risky move, at least from a business.
Sorry, Kingfisher, right?
Yeah, Kingfisher. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry,
Okay.
my bad.
That's
Sorry.
fine.
So the strategy that they took from right from the start, it was very evident that it was not really it was a risky move, and we don't know. I mean, we actually saw what started happening in 2007, 2008. The telltale signs were there, but yeah, I mean, they just couldn't get their cost right. Look at 2007, 2008 numbers. The cost of Kingfisher Airlines on a per seat kilometer. So in aviation industry, we always measure something very, just say you will see it in your Grab or Ola and Uber. When you compare, what do you see? You see how much you are going to pay per kilometer, right?
Correct.
So aviation industry works in the same way. You have to be able to, you are transporting a passenger from point A to point B, which is the next kilometer, and you're trying to understand what is going to be the cost of transport of per kilometer and what is the revenue. Revenue largely, Kingfisher was not bad, right? I mean, from a load factor perspective, yes, they were still in 70% load factor, which is not extremely good,
Okay.
uh, but they were not extremely bad. What killed them was the cost. So you had the same aircraft type being operated by another airline in India at that point of time, who was still growing and today was number one, uh, which was at half the cost of what Kingfisher was operating at. So it just brings to fore that you cannot say that that 50% cost increase was purely because they were operating a premium airline. That would not be factually correct. So
Mm-hmm.
that means there generally between a kind of an LCC model to a full service airline, you will see a cost difference of about 15 to about 20%, which is fair
Correct.
enough.
So just to make it simpler for the people out there, LCC means low cost airlines, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
LCC is the low cost airline model, which now everyone knows you don't get anything in it. You basically just you have to buy everything. But uh, and you saw that that difference should have been about 15 to 20%, but it
Correct.
cannot be half or double of what your
Mm.
competitor is. So there were structurally issues in the airline, and our policies and stuff that were there at that point of time really did not help the situation that Kingfisher was in.
Correct. I feel like there was so many external macro factors at play. It was really just a storm of factors just coming together that sort of pulled Kingfisher Airlines into it. But we obviously know about what happened in 2008, and we'll touch upon it as the time comes. But in terms of specific policy measures within India itself, what kind of insight can you provide on that fact?
So you see, one of the we always had policies which and structurally the problem that we have seen in policy making has been that policies are made with one certain objective, and those objectives are largely driven by either the fact that something new needs to be announced. You want to show to the world that India is moving forward, uh, but it does not factor in the sustainability factor of the business,
Okay.
because every business has its own, like in your business, everyday work that you do, every company has KPIs, right? Okay,
Correct.
this is my KPI in terms of performance, efficiency, blah blah blah. But in policies, the KPIs are just top lines. Did I open X number of bridges? Yes. Okay, but uh, you know, uh, did those bridges last for without maintenance for 2 years? No, that is not monitored. So you cannot have one single kind of mechanism. Now, at that point of time, we had this very interesting rule, a 5 by 20 rule, it used to be called,
5 by
which was,
20.
yeah.
Okay.
So an airline would not be allowed to fly international unless it had 5 years of operations and 20 aircraft operating in its fleet. All right? No idea where it came from, but it has been there. Okay. So someone said that, okay, minimum you need to fly 5 years and you need to have 20 aircraft to
Correct.
fly international. Now, obviously, this came at a time when all the private airlines were starting in India. At that point of time, the government was also sort of being wary because all the Air India slots, Indian Airlines slots were being taken away by the
Mm.
private airline. So there was some kind of a protection mechanism that was brought in. And this single rule became such a big problem for Kingfisher. And I think the other problem with Mr. Malia was his lack of patience, at least in running the airline.
Mm.
I mean, just look at it, right? Today, I don't know how many people even know, but look at Akasa, which is an airline in Mumbai, right?
Mm-hmm.
That airline today has taken 28 aircraft now, 27th or 28th aircraft, which is very interesting because not many people know how they've slowly grown into become 28 aircraft. All Maya needed to do was just have patience and being able to achieve that 5 year and 25 year 20 rule. But no, he wanted to fly international immediately because it's his brand, it's a premium airline, blah blah blah, and that led to that decision, that awful decision of taking Air Deccan or buying out
Mm.
Air Deccan. So, the most pragmatic view at that point of time from the government should have been to relook at this policy. You already had five strong airlines at that point of time in India, and I think there should have been a review of this rule much before, to say that yes, if private airlines are going to be a primary mode of transport for people connecting to Southeast Asia, Middle East. We had a lot of Middle Eastern flights at that point of time.
Correct.
So it probably makes sense that allow airlines to to grow, because then Indian Airlines would have been able to contribute significantly to the international traffic. So that policy by itself was extremely bad.
So was
The,
that policy introduced then and there itself, like during that time, or did it exist before
no,
that?
it was there before. It was
Yeah.
there before, uh, and uh, and when Kingfisher was expanding, a lot of times those policies were questioned. That what is the logic behind this 520? I mean,
Hmm.
okay, why 520? Why not 10, 100? There has to be some logical
Correct.
sense
Yeah.
behind why 5 and 20 comes into picture. But no one reviewed it. No, and there were always a lot of roadblocks in that. Second, if you remember what, and I'm sure a lot of people might, I mean, I look at it as sort of connecting the dots.
Okay.
2012, 2011, 2012, Kingfisher Airlines was already in significant trouble.
Correct.
Uh, and however, there was a lot of interest from foreign airlines, specifically Middle East, to invest in Kingfisher Airlines.
Oh, I know about
Because,
this. Yes.
right? And what's interesting is this when the final offer came somewhere around 2011 and 2012,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was blocked. It said, no, no, no. Foreign airline cannot invest beyond a certain threshold in airlines in India, and as a result of which, they cannot get funding. So, uh, and there were a couple of people involved in that high level decision that, and I still remember a very famous TV interview of the two big airline CEOs at that point of time coming out of
Hmm.
this meeting room, and Malia saying, well, we are pushing the government, but it is not approved, blah, blah, blah. And the minute everything shut down for Kingfisher, 2013, all of a sudden the government changed the rule and there was funding from Etihad into Jet Airways. Because Etihad invested a significant amount of money into Jet Airways, which just sort of flipped in one single year. So the whole position from whatever was stopping the government from doing it just completely flipped in one single year. So which was pretty funny, because from a value perspective, uh, Kingfisher's product value was far better. As you rightly said, the
Yes.
service of Kingfisher, whatever said and done, you have to give it. Even I still remember people 5, 6 years later after the airline shut down, people still say that service was some service in terms of what they provide. So
I mean, I remember being about 12 or 13 years old, and I thought it was the most fantastic airlines, at least domestically.
oh, absolutely,
And I
absolutely,
mean, whatever I fly domestically now in India, it just does not match up to, what I felt as a younger child. Maybe it's some part of it is nostalgia, but obviously you are fully grown up then, unlike me. so, so obviously you've seen it, you've lived it first, and you've seen the differences. And I certainly think that the people aren't wrong in saying that what Kingfisher did offer for its time and age is definitely a class apart from what's even being offered now.
yeah, absolutely. And see, at the end of the day, one of the things that people, I mean, I understand there was this view from Mr. Malia that this is a leisure airline. It's for leisure people. Yes, you can have a leisure product, but that
Correct.
does not mean that you have leisure costs,
Hmm.
right? On the cost side, to run an airline, you need to run it like how an army regiment or a defense regiment would run. You need significant discipline in every aspect of your business in order to provide the customer at the end whatever service and whatever product you want to offer. Right? Singapore Airlines, Etihad, Emirates, uh, all of these guys have been doing fantastically. Yes, they have certain structural advantages. That's a different part. But the fact is, you cannot be in discipline with your costs. And
Hmm.
Kingfisher Airlines made a lot of mistakes in those areas, significant number of mistakes, which from a business analyst perspective or an aviation analyst perspective was very evident that what they were doing was just simply unsustainable. Either they had to completely restart as an airline and cut down everything, or they needed a massive restructuring in order to get their act in place. Otherwise, they were all over the place.
I absolutely want to get into this further, but from at least the layman's perspective, which is me, I mean, I felt like, as you mentioned, one of their biggest faulty decisions was indeed acquiring Air Deccan, because it's like you want to also be a premium line, but then you also want to acquire this line, which is not for people who can pay a premium. And you name it Kingfisher Red, and it's still somehow okay. It's good, I suppose, but it's like you're just spreading yourself too thin. Not only are you taking on their operational costs and every other hazardous cost out there, but you're also then taking on this like dual identity. And I don't know why and how, Vijay Mallya decided to actually invest in that and acquire it. But I mean, I hope you can make sense of it to me.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There was no there would be no uh, financial consultant worth his salt who would make or who would give this idea to him to say, bro, just go and buy this one. The the only reason he bought that airline was because that airline had been running for 5 years and he needed the 520 rule in order to fly international. So,
Mm.
you know, some extremely learned people at that point of time thought it would make sense to just buy off, uh, this low cost airline which does not fit anywhere in your business model just to get across that uh, 520 rule. So, the the problem is, uh, the funny part is that technically after buying Air Deccan, Kingfisher Airline was flying technically on the AOC, Air Operating Certificate, of Air Deccan, not the other way around. So,
Mm.
on regulatory perspective, Air Deccan was not consumed into Kingfisher. Kingfisher was consumed into Air Deccan.
Wow.
And because they needed that 520
Correct.
rule sort of work around that. But I mean, I think there was absolutely no financial reasonable logic in taking that decision. And just like that, I mean, I don't know if there was this his decisions on buying aircraft left, right, and center, like how people go and buy shops from Gucci, one bag this, one
Mm.
bag that, walking into the manufacturer and saying, okay, I want 330, I want 340, I want 380. First, I mean, if these are multi-million dollar assets, and you need to be far more prudent in cash as
Mm.
compared to anyone else. A lot of people don't understand that uh, airline business is, if you want to draw a parallels to an airline business and a banking business has the same most important thing, cash.
Cash.
If you don't have
Yes.
cash, you're done. And uh, airline business cannot run on debt. I mean, you can have working capital loan and stuff like that, but debt is what in Asia Pacific, debt is the biggest killer of the airline business anyway. We've seen the same issues with Air India, SpiceJet. All of these airlines are having the same issue. There's just too much amount of debt on the company. So, uh, and the thumb rule says that once your debt crosses about 8 to 9%, or worst case scenario, 11% of your top line in airline, you are in a spiral which it's very difficult to control. So that is sort of the benchmark that you have at least in the airline industry.
So is that a point where Kingfisher had hit around 2011, 2012?
Kingfisher was actually higher than I think about 18% in terms of their revenue and interest obligations and debt. They were more than 18%. And look at this factor. I mean, if we just do a very simple calculation of people don't understand. I'll just give you a comparison.
Mm.
2007, 2008, the average revenue that you would get in let's say a brand like Kingfisher Airline in domestic India to fly 1 kilometer was about 4.7 rupees. So
Okay.
4.7 rupees to fly one passenger 1 kilometer. after COVID, the recent results, if you look at, let's say, the market leader, uh, Indigo and Air India, the domestic revenue per kilometer is about 5.2 rupees. So from 4.6, you have gone to 5.2 from 2007 to
To now.
2025, right? So that's I mean, if Mumbai taxi Mumbai taxi will have their fare revised much quicker than what we have seen the increase in
Correct,
fares
yeah.
in air transport. So it
And
just
that's
tells
saying
you,
something.
yeah, that's true. I mean, look at the challenge that you have in this market where uh, the the ability for you to increase fare is so difficult
Hmm.
uh, in a market. And so look at the structural problems within aviation, and I'll give you a class of, let's say, Ola and Uber, right?
Okay.
So Ola, Uber, today you would be charging what? Approximately 10 rupees a kilometer, 8 rupees a
Yes.
kilometer. Here you get 4.5, 5 rupees a kilometer, okay, in the airline industry. If the guy in Ola doesn't get a passenger, he's fine. He can just sit somewhere, have a cup of tea, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't need to keep running the car. In the airline industry, if you don't have passengers, you still have to operate the flight
Correct.
because you call it scheduled airline. So if he doesn't get the passenger, he still have to operate the flight. So that's a
Yeah.
cost that is coming up. And these are some of the things which are causing or which still have structural problems. This imagine this is happening today. In 2007, 2008, when all of that happened with the fuel prices going up, financial uh, destability, all of those costs were adding into the business. So you are
Hmm.
ending up creating this problem where your ability to go onto the top line is nowhere connected to what happens to your cost. In all of the places, if there is a cost increase, you should be able to push the price up to a
Correct.
certain point to absorb that cost. Or you have government coming in, like in the petrol and diesel prices and blah blah blah. You have the fuel prices being controlled and being monitored by the government. But that did not happen in the ATF side,
Hmm.
right? So we cannot say, and I think that was a mistake from the industry at that point of time and the government at that point of time, because if one side you are saying that this is an important key piece of infrastructure for your business, for your country, air transport is an integral part of
Yes.
your infrastructure. And if you are not able to give support to that structure, specifically when your fuel prices, which contribute about 38, 40, 42% of your cost, if you're not able to give support at that point of time, there is no way that that structure will survive. And that's what you saw with Kingfisher Airlines debt. I mean, 2007 to 2008, the amount of debt increased from, I think, somewhere about 1,000 crore in 2007 to almost about 8,000 crore in 2008. So that's when the first uh, areas of downfall started in the company.
And I mean, you hinted at this, but what specific policy measures do you think India and India's aviation industry should have taken in order to preserve the life and longevity of its, well, domestic airlines in that time period? What do you think?
I think first of all that 520 rule was a was an absolute uh, stupidity. I mean, there was no need for that kind of a 520,
Does that
right?
protectionist measure still exist?
I think it has been removed to certain extent. I believe there was a change that
Is
happened in
it
the
like
management.
316 now?
Now, I think there has been some change. I haven't followed Indian aviation very strongly the last 1 or 2 years. But I believe there was some change that had already happened in that subject. But we can check on that. But the fact is that, yeah, I mean, that should not have been there. The other uh, issue that you had with the so this was one policy, which was the 520.
Correct.
Then we had another very interesting policy, which used to be sort of the tier two, tier three airports. So
Okay.
basically, the logic was the logic was simple to banking.
Hmm.
Okay, so in banking industry, if you have a large bank, they need to provide loans to even certain risky projects and stuff like that as a part of their portfolio. Uh, and that's how the smaller banks operate, because the smaller banks provide higher risk loan, And then at the end of the year, they sell this loan into a bigger bank so that the bigger bank meets its portfolio requirement as part of its sort of regulations or things required by the RBI. What was funny in the airline industry was there were these airports identified by the government. Well, some of the airports in Northeast, some other places which were these tier two, tier three airports where there was no traffic or very low traffic. And the rule was they came up with some very interesting mathematical calculation, which said that if you operate 100 flights, let's say, on the metro sectors, Mumbai, Delhi,
Right.
Mumbai, Bangalore, then 10 flights have to be operated in these routes. So basically, you're telling the airline that, listen, if you make money on the Bombay, Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore sector, you have to
Hmm.
operate flights into these sector where there is hardly any passengers. And okay, if I do that and I lose money, what support do I get? No support. Your problem. Handle it.
This
So,
is sorry. Go on. I'll comment on it once you're done. But
no, go ahead, go
wow.
ahead, go ahead. Tell me.
No. So the thing that shocks me, I think the thing sort of just comes out at my head right now is that I mean a lot of if my read is right, a lot of India's aviation industry was run and dominated by private companies, Kingfisher and the such, Jet Airways, for example. India by itself, the country, did not do much in the way of providing a domestic airlines that could cater to, well, its people, citizens like you and I. And in order to make up for their shortcomings, India, in order to make up for its shortcomings, imposed very wayward rules, wayward restrictions upon the private companies who were actually running the day to day when it came to India's aviation industry. Like, is my read correct? Like, is
Yes.
that what's happening?
Yeah, that's
Because
exactly
that's
what happened.
maddening. Because that's,
Yeah,
I mean, what are you doing? You're just stifling any and all, progress, any and all growth that can happen. I mean, what is this? This is
yeah.
ridiculous.
That is what happened. And it doesn't it it is not rocket science for someone to sit down and say, bro, I mean, if this guy is losing money here because we are forcing him to operate, uh, what are we giving him back? And this guy says, yeah, you know what? That's his problem. He's got enough money. So the attitude of the government at that point of time was that air transport is a luxury. It was not just Malia. Malia just manifested that luxury in reality. But the
Correct.
attitude of the ministry and the government at that point of time was that air transport is a luxury. So, so it was like that. If you're running an airline, you are required to undertake loss-making business just because you want to fly aircraft in some places, right? Which, 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 which was crazy at that point of time. And I can tell you, a lot of airlines revolted. And let's say, dude, why? I'm not getting loads out there. What should I do? Why should I fly into all those areas?
Correct.
And you have to understand that again, if you are an airline which is going to operate, let's say, a specific aircraft type, an Airbus 320, let's assume 180
Hmm.
seat. Now you ask me to go and fly to Timbuktu, where there is absolutely no load, but I, as a government, I'm telling you, fly there. Now you have two options: either fly a 180 seater aircraft there, get 10 passengers and fly back, or find an aircraft which is smaller in operations, fly it there. At least you lose less cash because flying 180 seat, you have, let's say, whatever, $5,000, $6,000 an hour in terms of your cash
Correct. In
cost.
terms of just like sheer occupancy, you're
Yeah,
losing less money.
correct. So now you're forcing the airlines to take decisions on their fleet, which is not in line with the strategy that they are built on. Can you imagine a Kingfisher class aircraft flying an ATR into a Timbuktu airport to carry 10 passengers? Is absolutely, that does not fit with the logic.
Correct. Like with respect to the people of Timbuktu, I have nothing against them, but I wouldn't find them flying Kingfisher. Like
Correct.
maybe it wasn't meant for them. I mean, at least the read that I'm getting, and this might seem premature, but I It is what it is. I feel like the Indian government was forcing this sort of identity upon its people, like, oh, you should only, use trains. Like that is like the main measure of transportation for you across India, from the north to the south, from the east to the west. And like planes are very much like a luxury which you shouldn't fly.
You're absolutely right. That is where the government at that point of time completely misread and misunderstood the importance of this sector. I mean, today everyone talks about that we are going to be the third largest aviation market. We are the biggest. In terms of aircraft orders, we control
Hmm.
about 25% of the total order book out of Asia Pacific, and more than that. So, but all of this could have been much bigger had those measures been taken place before.
Much bigger and much earlier, even in some
Correct.
regard. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Today we are all saying no, array, India does not have a very strong international long haul carrier. Let Indigo. Indigo is bringing in Airbus 350. Air India should fly international to US. Blah blah blah. Boss, you had those kind of aircraft when Kingfisher and Jet were there. What did you do to them? Right. So
I think in this day and age, because I have flown quite a bit internationally, I don't think Indian airlines for the timing are built to actually provide that experience to like have like a smooth flight internationally. I've flown Air India, I've nothing against Air India, but like I did not have fun on the flight. It was a painful 19 hours for me.
but that's a fact. See, you look at how Indigo is itself is changing its business model now. Who would have thought 5 years back or 10 years back that Indigo will move away from a all economy to a business class in their aircraft? No one thought. No, everyone
Yeah,
said, the typical books every writer writes and every person says the key fundamentals of profitability. First, have single type of aircraft. Indigo does not have. Indigo has
no,
two different types of aircraft.
correct.
Number two, only flow one kind of cabin. Indigo does not have that. Indigo again has three different types of cabins that they fly. So, a lot of uh, challenge that we see in the airline industry is these people who like to write books about or write things about a subject uh, sitting externally when their money is not involved. So the
Hmm.
only people that who can really tell you what happens in aviation are people who are sitting in their money and finance department to tell you what is wrong fundamentally with this business. Uh, so that was one. Indigo also did not. I think the place where Indigo really missed. Sorry, Kingfisher missed the bus, and Indigo really captured it. Was at that point of time, generally in the aviation industry, when you take a new kind of an aircraft, which is fairly new in the market, airlines will prefer to have kind of a maintenance contract. Now, imagine if you were going to buy a BMW, right? Tomorrow, and this is the first time you're buying a BMW. And you go into the BMW showroom and you say, boss, I want to buy a car. And the guy will say, you know what, sir, we will also give you an AMC service along with it, which is a maintenance service. So anything happens to your car, we'll take care. And let's say near your house, there is a Bablu garage. Okay. And you say, you know what? No, no. I'm going to take a BMW, but I'm going to sign the agreement of maintenance with Bablu garage.
Hmm.
Okay. He will maintain my BMW. And the Bablu garage guy has one cycle repair, does couple of auto rickshaw repairs. He gets one of the cars which he generally repairs, but tukpatti kind of thing, just
Correct,
hammer
correct.
here, hammer there, and fix it.
Yeah, he had a Skoda 10 years ago that he fixed. That was his big claim to fame.
That's so so and that's what Indigo really was extremely good at. Indigo was very clean in making sure that the contracts are signed with companies who can be held accountable for what they are doing.
Uh-huh.
And Kingfisher decided not to do that. And one of the things that happened to them between the 2008, 2010, 2011 period
Mhm.
is that on this specific aircraft engine, there was a design problem which caused a lot of aircraft to be grounded because engines were burning out and stuff like that. So at one end, you had lined up Kingfisher aircraft with all these engines which are removed from the aircraft, and they're still waiting to get it back from repair because they don't have any contract.
Correct.
And on the other hand, you had another airline which also had this engine issue. But because their contract was with the manufacturer, they had one engine, one spare engine for every aircraft. So all they had to do was remove one engine, put another one, fly back. So each of their aircraft was still generating revenue. And Kingfisher had aircraft which was on ground because they did not have an engine.
So, who were the Bablu garages of the world that Kingfisher had contracts with? How is this working?
They, so instead of signing the contract with the OEM, they went and signed contracts with third-party companies. Now, the third-party companies, remember, are good. I'm not saying they're bad because they have to follow certain standards.
Hmm.
But when there is a problem with design of an engine, see, as long as everyone is buying from you, you like it. But
Right.
it's very difficult for if you are a manufacturer and your part suddenly has a problem which is causing, you know, millions of dollars of damages,
Mm-hmm.
you will find every possible hole in the contract to say this is not my problem. I did not do it, right? I remember at that point of time, the culprits that were given by major OEM was the culprit is India's environment. The culprit is Mumbai airport and Delhi airport because there is a little bit of sand that you see near the airport which gets ingested into the engine. Oh,
Yeah.
bullshit, all bullcrap, right? But that's what happened. So the decision of Kingfisher, whichever was taken in whatever uh, reasoning at that point of time, did not help them in the long term. And this is again a problem with airlines where they take short term decisions without looking at the long term risks. The difference between the difference in the approach was airlines like Indigo and other good airlines always take a decision after analyzing long term risks and they
Correct.
actually value that risk. Airlines like Kingfisher said, no, 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 I like this guy, go with him. And that's how decisions were being taken. So that really resulted in a big issue for them because at the time when the market was bad, fuel prices were high, they had debt on their books, they needed the aircraft to operate, and they didn't have the aircraft. The aircraft were grounded. So their top line was hit significantly, right? Uh, so they did not take a lot of these decisions in a long-term view. And that's also structurally a lot of problems in airlines today. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you see, and this is largely in South Asia airlines which are not performing good. All of these have the same kind of telltale signs. You know, in our language, uh, there is this saying, no, कि पूत के पाँव इसमें दिख जाते हैं. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can see it right at the birth. So
Correct.
once you have those kind of scenarios coming in with an airlines, it starts telling you immediately that this airline is not going to be able to take that kind of call. Look at today what's happened. Look at Air Asia, right? Look at what happened with Thai Airways. Look at what happened with Paramount. Look at what happened with Jet and Kingfisher. All of these are very classic examples where uh, the decision making process is not based on financial risk, but there are some other parameters which are driving those decision making. And in airlines, once you take a decision, the impact of that decision is going to not come today. It might hit you 5 years, 10 years down the line, and it might hit you at a time when you really are not prepared to be able to handle that kind of a issue. So uh, that that is one of the other things that happened with Kingfisher Airlines. So they just did not have the top line revenue to support whatever costs they have.
Correct. I believe there was a time when they were not even able to pay for their operating costs on like a day-to-day basis. It was getting that bad for them.
That's true. That's true. And they can't help it. I mean, uh, as I told you before, right? The discipline in the airline industry.
Hmm.
I mean, now if you are a boss, if you are
Hmm.
the owner of the company, and you say, boss, I want all premium service for my passenger. My passenger needs to feel like a king, blah 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 blah. And let's say you are a head of a department. Let's say a small department which is handling whatever
Hmm.
XYZ things. And you, as a head of the department, are now reporting to the CEO and blah, blah, blah. And your CEO says, bro, you know what? I want like the top of the line things. I want a handkerchief that when the passenger put on their face, they should feel like they're in Dubai or some other place, all scented and stuff like that, right? So, you and the thought process in the company was, boss ke paas bahut paisa hai. Boss has enough money. That is the language that he used to say outside. And that is also a language that he would say inside during during a lot of discussions. So anyway, so
So
the
he was essentially projecting a very fair weather mindset all throughout, whether that be
correct,
outside or inside. That things
correct.
are fine. Let's just keep going as we've planned. Everything's okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
his famous statement that I can recover all losses by increasing 1 cent on every beer bottle that I sell in India, I can recover all the losses. But the problem of this communication from the top line was
Hmm.
that the people who were below, who were taking day-to-day decisions, started focusing more on luxury than cost. Okay. So, and listen, this business is all about sale, right? Internal and external sale. Now, if I'm a vendor and I come to you and say, sir, look at my handkerchief. The handkerchief you're using right now feels like Dubai. This is my handkerchief, which is $5 more expensive, but will make you feel like you are in London, right? And the guy says, oh, fantastic. Yes, yes, yes. Give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. So if you're while yes, luxury was a focus because the decision making within the company right at the ground level
Mhm.
became that don't worry about the money, just buy the most expensive item which the customer will feel great. All of this created this cycle where you are building up inventory, where you are building up costs, which in order for you to cut off would mean complete disruption to a lot of items. It
Correct.
would mean a disruption to your supply chain. It would mean disruption to your people. It would mean disruption to a lot of contracts that you've already signed. So once once this attitude set into the company, there was no mechanism or a check and balance within the company, which was luxury versus cost.
Correct.
What's essential and important versus what is okay to have, good to have, right? And that is why you see that number in costs. Your cost. I mean, if you're saying that your cost was almost 5 rupees per kilometer at that point of time in 2007, 2008, and you had another airline operating in India, the same kind of aircraft whose cost was 3 rupees per kilometer. So that gap is hugely significant.
Correct.
And once you have that kind of cost, obviously your revenue is not in line. You need to at the end of the day know that boss, listen, yes, I can have premium airline. I can have uh, uh, people who are ready to pay premium class fare. Okay, but then you still have to fill the other 180, 150 seats in the aircraft with common people,
Absolutely.
right? So if you can't do that, you'll not be able to make money out of it. And that is what was happening with them. They were making money, but not enough to sustain the kind of costs that were creeping up within the airline.
So in terms of, so this is the two-parter from my end. I think the first part is a bit of a reflection on what you just said. I feel like Vijay Mallya was the first one who truly lived the YOLO life. You only live once. He really went with the vibe. So he was in for a good time, not a long time, for example. I felt like he did build up a weight in a lot of non-essential areas, which were then difficult to cut off because at the end, I think in his head, he truly was selling an experience. He wasn't selling an airline, so to speak. And I think the second part that I wanted to ask you was if you were in Vijay Mallya's place does with the decisions he had still made, so imagine he had still acquired Deccan Air, the 2008 financial crisis that still happened. After that, what would be the steps that you had taken in his place in order to still keep the airline afloat?
A very, very interesting question. Yes, you're right that uh, he really his whole focus was that experience. which is fine. I don't think that's a wrong business strategy, because at the end
Correct.
of the day,
I feel like the Indian people need a break. We deserve good things.
yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I mean, see, it's not that there is not a market in India for that business model. The and I think I blame a couple of, I don't know, I don't blame really a couple of people, but I also to a large extent uh, uh, blame the success story models which are published across the globe. What
Okay.
happens is, you have 5 airlines, one of them succeeds, 4 of them shut down. You have these people who sit down and write the reason for success of the one airline, but they never write about the failure of the 4 airlines, right?
Correct. It's the same armchair philosophers you were talking about who
Yeah,
love writing books without having a stake in the actual matter.
in the actual matter. And, uh, you know, number one, if that was the uh, business category in which you had to fly,
Mhm.
the first thing you had to identify was, do I really need to get into a bigger aircraft or no? Right? At the end of the day, if you're going to be first flying India, you can connect India maximum in about 3 hours. Anywhere north, south, you can connect India,
Correct.
whatever is required. Now, who was asking you to go and buy an Airbus 320 180-seater aircraft? You don't need to do. If you know that your segment of market which is going to pay you the premium for this is going to be lower, you don't really need to get into that kind of market. A very classic example a lot of people don't know about today is an airline called Star Air in India. They operate the Embraer 170, 175s and 145, smaller aircraft, but they're doing fantastically well, right? So because you go to a manufacturer, it's like you walking in into a BMW guy. Again, I'm just using it as an example. Let's
I
say you
love the
walk in
BMW
there.
examples.
So let's say you walk into the BMW guy and say, you know what, I want to start a taxi business for people.
Hmm.
Do you think he's going to tell you, you know what, Fiat is the best model for you? Will he say, no, Mercedes is a fantastic? He'll say, no, boss, I am the best. I have the aircraft or the car for it. And if you are a person who he knows has tons of money, do you
Hmm.
think he's going to sell you the lowest version of his BMW? No, he's going to
Absolutely
sell you
not.
the highest version of BMW.
Correct.
Now, if you buy it, it's not his problem. It's the fact that you are a fool, that you went to that guy and said, which aircraft should I take? Right? So they went in and got these aircraft, which aircraft is not the right fit for the kind of business model you want to do. And that is the first starting point of failure,
Hmm.
because these are long-term capital asset. Okay. If you have these kind of, what I mean by long-term capital asset is not just the capital in the aircraft, but once you decide the aircraft, the investment that you need to do in terms of your pilot training, in terms of engineering training, all of these are significant costs.
Correct.
So if you choose the wrong product for the kind of market that you're going to offer and the kind of product that you're going to offer, you have already built in a significant amount of capital cost now coming into play, right? So that was the first starting point failure. And even today, I can tell you the number of airline people who come with business models and blah, 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 and saying, I'm going to start a new airline, I'm going to do this. And everyone starts with, we will go with Airbus, some 320 or Boeing 737. And the question is,
Hmm.
why that aircraft?
Correct.
And they have this notion, oh, it's the lowest cost per seat. Bullshit. It's lowest cost per seat at a certain price range, at a certain
Certain
distance,
volume.
at a certain volume. Exactly.
Correct.
It's the lowest cost at a certain volume, right? They forget the second part of the equation. They only look at one part of the equation and say, all full service airlines or all successful airlines in the world have started with these aircraft without realizing you know half of the story.
Correct.
Southwest Airline, which is sort of called the grandfather of all low cost airlines in the world, based on which everyone made the story that you should have one type of aircraft, blah 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 blah. They forgot one key part.
Which was?
They did not take new aircraft. When
Hmm.
Southwest Airlines started, at that point of time, there was a fuel crisis. And there was a specific old aircraft model. I think it was a 737-200 or something, which was very old aircraft, which were parked in the desert because no one wanted to fly it because it was too expensive to fly that aircraft. This guy went and picked up those aircraft at dirt cheap rates. And that's how he built the business. You went and you buy the highest premium BMW and then you expect to run a business which is
Correct.
focused on low cost. That's not going to work. The second part of your question, which was what could I have done? I think the first thing that should have probably you could look at is once you had taken air tech in, because there are two different business models, there should have been a way to segregate the two P&Ls of the business line, the profit and loss and the financials of two business lines clearly separated out. One side of the business had to focus purely on the kind of business model or the premium or the kind of focus that they had. And the second had to focus on the low cost model.
Hmm.
And the second most important part, if I would be there, was I would get the hell out of both the companies and get professional people who know how to run an airline into the business. And a lot of people, this is a lot of people don't see this. Jet during the growth phase, during the phase that it was really doing good, was the CEO an Indian? No. When when Indigo is trying to expand so big and what it has done in the last so many years, is the CEO Indian? No. Air India, when it is trying to expand international, become a large airline, is the CEO Indian? No. There is a reason. While there might be other strategic reasons of saying, we want to do this, we want more connections, and there are certain values, but uh, there is a saying in our business that if you look at Asian airlines, the successful Asian airlines are those airlines who do not have CEOs from their own country.
Oh, so
And
this is true for like the entire aviation world.
for the Asian region, there is a
Oh, for the
difference.
Asian regions.
Asian is
Okay,
different,
okay,
European and the Americans are different because
okay.
a lot of it goes from the psychology perspective of a lot of people who develop. The number of uh, the because the kind of, and I'm using this word again because it is highly mis uh, sort of misunderstood or not given the kind of importance in aviation. The kind of discipline that you need to run an airline, where you will find very few Asians who are built with that discipline model in their life
Hmm.
for whatever reason. Just the way of our upbringing, we can't even drive car in our lane when we are driving on the road. Stuff like that. You might have heard the expression that when you call certain people for meetings, there's a very vast difference between uh, where an airline is really good and when you know that airline is
Hmm.
really just a pack of things. A good airline, you call a 9 o'clock meeting, you will have the full team sitting at 9 o'clock because they're focused on getting their job done and get out.
Correct.
The other places are when you call a meeting for a 9 o'clock, the guys will come up at 10:30 and say, hey, sorry, man, my other boss is still busy. So as someone has called for a meeting, so let's start discussion. That discipline is very important. A lot of people keep talking about other things about Indigo, of sale and leaseback aircraft, blah, blah, blah. But fundamentally, the discipline that Indigo had, I'm sure it even has today, has been its largest uh, factor in what it has achieved. Discipline at the senior management level, discipline at middle management level, and the discipline even at the lower working level. That is something that they got it absolutely on the point.
Hmm.
And and that is one of the reasons why I think I would say that statement that I would get out of it and get someone else to run. Because I mean, if I have that much money and I know that I have not done good decisions up till now, nothing is going to change that I'll become a great decision maker tomorrow.
Correct. I
So,
feel like Kingfisher really needed a reconfiguration of company values in some regard.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. So yeah, those were the things which Malia. I mean, yeah, we keep talking about the loans and stuff, but there were a lot of underlying factors which he could have corrected at various points in time. He could have corrected and taken a corrective action.
Correct. It's not right to only just blame him though, because he had his mistakes.
Yeah,
I felt like his podcast from the other day was like his last chance at good PR to like set the record straight from his end because you've not heard from him for many, many years.
yeah,
But again, as our conversation has gone on, I've realized there's a lot of macro factors at hand, specifically with the rules and policies of the government of India itself, who have not done right by the very same people who are driving their aviation industry, who are saying that, okay, you need to do extra favors for us in order to run your company here, but you also don't receive even a packet of peanuts for the same like task you do for us.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like that's such a shameless way of going about things.
But that's a fact. That is such a fact. I'm telling you. I mean, uh, even today nowadays, we guys have this. When we this funny part, a lot of things have been done today. You might have heard of Gift City and
Mm-hmm.
aircraft leasing and blah blah blah. We talk about self-reliance in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat and stuff.
Yes.
Here's a point, uh, food for thought. So, 70% of the aircraft operating in India today
Mm-hmm.
are leased from mid European companies. The insurance on this aircraft, which is a very, very important part, is again largely controlled by UK companies. Yeah. So what if tomorrow one of these guys says, you know what, we're going to sanction something. We will not allow you to fly the aircraft. Can you imagine 70% of your aircraft operating in India will be on ground? Because you cannot fly the aircraft. Once the lessor says you cannot, you cannot.
Correct.
So you have now your third largest aviation market in the world, on which we are having so much confidence and we are feeling proud about it, is completely dependent on a set of people who are sitting outside of India and dependent that these guys don't pull the plug.
But I mean, it can't be as just as simple as the Indian aviation industry sort of being run solely on the goodwill of the British people, for example, or whichever
No,
companies there are in the UK.
no, no. What I mean by saying is, the if tomorrow, and we can probably have a second discussion later on this subject, but let's say, uh, if tomorrow, for any reason, India was to take certain stance from a defense perspective, and as a repercussion of that, some of these larger, uh, more educated brothers in the UN or someone decided that no, you know what, we will sanction XYZ or do some issue. All the other companies would then be forced to take certain action.
Correct.
And once they do that, your industry is going to come to a halt.
Yes.
Right? And uh, this is something which is uh, it's very interesting and unique to India, because if you look at Malaysia, you look at Singapore, you look at to an extent even to Vietnam, Thailand. If you look at the composition of aircraft that they have, that is used by them to operate, the amount of leased aircraft which are controlled by foreign parties completely, would probably be in the range of about 25 to 30%,
And
not more
what's the
than
case
that,
with India?
70%,
Jesus.
right? So, uh, yes, but these are the fundamental uh, kind of uh, things that we are not able to answer. You see, the ability. Every business goes through its own cycle, ups and downs. Not every day will be a great day. Someday there will be a problem. Then things will improve. And as you see, I mean, look at SpiceJet. It's not that SpiceJet is fundamentally or within its core operations there is an issue. The problem for them is the legacy that they are currently carrying, or the kind of losses that they are carrying from the past, which is burdening them at this point of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if this whole asset class of or this whole aviation could have been supported by local financing, or there could have been a proper local financing structure put in place, this issue can significantly resolve, not just for SpiceJet but for other smaller airlines also, and allow them the path to expand. Today, your expansion in India is completely airline expansion in India is based only on two things. Do you have the cash, and do you have the ability to raise debt? That is why you only have Air India, which is Tata's, and Indigo, who has any kind of a sense today to grow. It's very difficult for other airlines to grow because neither they have cash, neither can they get debt, right? So, this duopoly that is being created in the aviation industry today is a natural outcome of all the kind of external factors that you have created, which are not in favor of aviation.
Correct.
Building an airport does not mean you are doing a great thing for an airline. Building an
Correct.
airport does not make the airline sustainable.
Correct. An airport doesn't mean like 50 planes, just like spawn out of midair. It doesn't happen. There's so many processes going on behind the back.
Correct. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, I think, I still feel that uh, there is a space for an airline like Kingfisher today. Not at that scale, but I think there is still scale for an airline like Kingfisher to be it
Hmm.
with the right product. Had things been different at that point of time, maybe the airline would have survived.
No,
But
in
yeah,
some ways, I absolutely agree. I feel like Vijay Mallya was an extremely forward-thinking man. I think what he foresaw of Kingfisher and what he wanted, as you said, because he was impatient and he wanted to get things done ASAP. He wanted what would have been available today 15 years ago, 18
15
years
years
ago.
back.
Yeah. And I feel like it wasn't possible at that time. Again, due to perhaps the culture of Kingfisher Airlines and other macro factors such as the wayward policies of the government of India. But again, it's such an interesting story because there's so many insights which have been revealed by you, like the fact that 70% of all Indian airlines are well leased by a foreign entity, and that can have some serious ramifications if things were to go awry. And that's a conversation I definitely want to get into, but I think it'll be a brilliant talking point for our next podcast episode where we actually discuss the rise of the Indian aviation industry and what's the actual truth behind it. You know? Correct.
Sounds good.
Correct. That's absolutely something you can do. But do you have any final thoughts on Kingfisher Airlines? Perhaps a stock reveal that might blow our minds for one last time.
No, no, I don't have anything like I don't want to give anything like that.
Okay.
But but yeah, I think all I want to say is that it's a it's a great reminder for a lot of airlines that uh, what the debacle that you saw in Kingfisher, which happened in 2011, the start of it was already in 2007. So the initial telltale signs were there from 2006, 2007. And a lot of it was to do by just looking at internally in terms of how decision making is being done.
Hmm.
And if that is an area that a lot of existing airlines, CEOs, owners should take a study from that uh, and try to identify those tell or those initial signs of decision making which eventually led into where we are today. I mean, for Kingfisher, the death was accelerated because of the 2008 issue.
Hmm.
But if that issue would not have been there, I still feel, given the way airline was running, it still probably would have extended its life by another 3, 4 years. But it would definitely not have been a sustainable airline in the long term. So I think a lot of existing uh, airline businesses, including CEOs and the owners of the airlines, uh, need to sort of uh, look back at the decision making process that they have internally, uh, in order to uh, which probably would not be very clear today in their terms because they are the ones who are taking the decisions. But I think that area is something that will impact at when you're looking at 8 years down the line.
Correct.
So
And I think
that's
one last lesson I want to harken back to is for all people interested in aviation, look at the stories that are the cautionary tale rather than looking at the successes. Because if you can weed out what the problems are and avoid them, turns out you can run a pretty successful airlines. But we'll get more on that in the next episode. So, everyone, you heard it here and you heard it first. This was indeed some of the other reasons behind the rise and fall of Kingfisher Airlines and subsequently Vijay Mallya. Mr. Rohit, thank you so much for being in attendance. Thank you so much for all of your insights. Wouldn't have been possible without you, and I look forward to having you here once again.
thank you so much, Ayush. It was wonderful having this chat. See you next
Absolutely.
time.
Absolutely. For everyone else, hope you have a fantastic morning, day, afternoon, or night, wherever you might be. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.